My name is Joe Reichard. I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Saab Doctor. What we're going to be discussing in this episode is why Saab? How did I end up with them? Why did I buy one? Where did they come from? No, wait, not that. Why did I choose them? What happened? Why am I a crazy Saab person? So I was asked by a subscriber, I'm not trying to be obnoxious or a fanboy or anything, but can I ask, what got you into Saabs? I've been wondering. I like to ask people that, and I'll put that in the blank space somewhere. His post that was actually on Facebook in a group that I admin. So what got me into Saabs? Funny enough, the first time I ever drove a Saab, I was 18. It was a Saab 99. My dad's Porsche mechanic had it, and he was trying to sell it as a $3,000 winter beater. I took it for a drive. It was amazingly fun, and then I didn't buy that. Later on that actual same winter, I had test drove a 9000 Turbo. I think it was like a 91 or 92. I didn't buy that either, funny enough. Drove it, didn't think a whole lot of it afterwards. Really liked the car, but it just wasn't the right time for me. I ended up keeping the Jeep Wrangler I had. It was a great winter driver. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a list of cars that I've had in the description below, so that way you can take a look. So for the longest time, I was a Ford guy, and bought a lot of Fords, had a few other cars, had some Chevys, had a Mitsubishi Eclipse GSX, had a handful of other things. When I met my wife, she was driving a Pontiac Grand Am GT with an SCT package. Beautiful car at the time. I mean, it was 2006. The car was 2 years old. It was a super nice car. And I had a 2001 Mustang. So, like I said, I was a Ford guy, always Ford. We got her out of the Grand Am and into a Fusion a few months later. She had a Fusion SEL, 4-cylinder, really nice car actually. But she didn't really like it. She felt it was too much of a grandma car, just too big. She was used to a little bit smaller car, even though the Grand Am was about the same size. It had more power, it was more sporty. So then she decided she wanted a Corolla. So we got her a nice Corolla S. Traded in actually the Fusion and my Mustang at the time for that, which was fine. I'd had my Mustang for, goodness, 6 years at that point, so it wasn't a big deal. And I was ready for a new car anyways. So traded that in, got her the Corolla. She was driving for work. She thought she was going to love it. She hated the car. After that, we decided that we were going to look at pretty much everything. In the meantime, I had bought a Mustang Mach 1. Ton of fun. Loved that car. It was an 04. Kept it low miles. Sold it at the wrong time, but I'll get into that in a little bit. So we went and we looked at every car under the sun. And I mean, we drove Mazda 6, Malibu SS at the time, because this was 2007. And we weren't married yet, so it was before we got married still. And so Mazda 6, Malibu SS, Jetta, Mazda 3, Mercedes C-Class, BMW 3 Series, which she really liked actually, but it was rear-wheel drive, and the all-wheel drive ones were just a little bit out of the price range. The Volvo S60, oh goodness, I honestly couldn't tell you everything we drove, because we drove pretty much everything. So after we drove all the cars, what happened was, she was a little frustrated because she didn't find anything she really loved. We actually drove a Fusion again, but we drove a Fusion SEL V6 all-wheel drive, and she really liked it. And then the dealership that had it sold it. It was a demo. It was super cheap, and we just missed out on that one. So who knows? We could have still been Ford people if that had happened. I don't know. I'm not sure. So one day she is looking, and she goes, "What about a Saab?" And of course, I cracked some Saab joke because I was a Ford guy, and that's what we do. And then we went and drove one, and she really liked it, and I really liked it. So she decided on a 9.3. We ended up getting her an 04 lime yellow Arc convertible that had actually been in a severe accident with a tree, but they did a really good job of fixing it, so we actually got it really cheap. She drove that, loved it. About a year later, we actually moved. At that point, we were living in kind of in a more like city type setting. It wasn't in the city, but it was, you could walk to a grocery store if you wanted to. You could walk here, walk there. So, I really didn't need like a daily driver type car. I had my Mustang and I had a company car at the time. So, not a big deal. So when we moved out to the country a little bit more, I needed a daily driver. So a good friend of mine runs a car lot. He sold me a 1992 9000 Turbo. It was a cheap $600 car. It was kind of a beater. It wasn't the nicest car on earth, but I had a lot of fun with it. I loved that car. And I drove it for about 6 months. I mean, when I got it, I knew that the transmission was on its last leg. It was an automatic. And right around New Year's, it actually grenaded the transmission. I ended up going up and picking it up. I was, planning on fixing it. And what happened was, we were renting at the time. We wanted to buy a house. So what I did was, after that broke, I sold my Mustang. I sold my Mach 1. I bought my 07 95 Aero, and this is actually where the Mach 1 story comes in. I sold the Mach 1 at the wrong time. I sold them when they were way too cheap because the 5-liter Mustang had just come out, and the new V6s were announced to have 300 horsepower, which is what the Mach 1 had. Nowadays, the Mach 1 is worth probably about $7 or $8 grand more than I sold it for. So it is what it is. But got my 07 Aero. I'd sold the 9000 because we were trying to buy a house and I didn't want extra things around to move. So I ended up selling that to a guy who showed up with a very nice LeBaron convertible and then went to ask me a whole bunch of questions. So funny enough, I found the registration for it and I found the owner's manual because I kept both of them. I don't have the title, I just have the registration card. But I'm actually having a friend look up whether the car is still on the road or not, or the last time it's been registered, I should say. And that's kind of where it started to spiral out of control a little bit. So around then, right before we bought our house, we traded Christy's lime yellow convertible in for her 2010 9.3. We bought our house, and then about a year later, we bought her sister an 0193 that needed an engine that I ended up building an engine for with the help of some friends and installing. And we bought our 02 Vegan convertible. So we had that. And then, that's where it just kind of spirals out of control. After that, I got an NG 900 convertible. I got my Vegan. I traded in my 07 95 on a Grand Cherokee, which I should have never done. That was a mistake. I really missed that car. I should have just finished paying it off because at the time I was still making payments on it. I should have just finished paying it off and bought a 97X Aero, but I'm not going to get into that. But yeah, that's where it really started spiraling out of control, and now we're here today where between Christy and I, we own, 11 Saabs and 1 Mercedes. Now, I will say I've always been a fan of European cars. My dad has had a number of cars. He's had Porsches, Jaguars, Mercedes. He has never owned a Swedish car. He's had a lot of German cars in his European cars. He's had a lot of American cars. So, that's kind of my background on cars. Come from a family of car people, it's just kind of how we are. So that's the background on how I got into Saabs. Below you'll be able to see my list of 40-ish cars, a few more that I've owned since I turned 16. I turned 16 in 2001, which you'll see below because that's when the dates start for cars. And my first car was a 1995 Cutlass Cruiser station wagon with, of course, what every 16-year-old in the early 2000s wanted, a bumping stereo. So, that's what we did. Thanks for tuning in. I should have some great content on the 9000 and the ML this week, and Saab on, folks.